Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Want to Know podcast. I'm Joel Haas.
I'm Lyle Allenstein.
And I'm Avery Hill.
Today, we'll preview Penn State's upcoming matchup against USC, give our thoughts on the recent AP poll, and touch on a few other subjects before ending with our score predictions. But to kick it off, what are the biggest storylines you guys are watching for heading into this matchup?
I mean, I think the biggest thing for me is looking at that defensive front for Penn State because that'll be key to the game. I mean, they've got to get there. I mean, Miller Moss has been pressured a ton. I mean, looking at the Michigan game, he was pressured 40% of the game. So, I mean, I think that'll be a big chance for them to show out, make plays, Zane Durant, Abdul Carter, and just the rest of the crew. I think that's a big opportunity for them to show out.
Yeah, I think it's going to be interesting because I think after this weekend, we're going to get a real feel for how this Penn State team actually is because USC is, I think, by far the best opponent that they've seen so far this year. Obviously, Illinois was ranked when they played them. USC was ranked. Now they're not because they lost to Minnesota. But regardless, I still think this is the best team that they're going to have played up to this point. And because you're going to see, can Penn State really get off to a fast start? Are they going to need to make these adjustments? So I think it'll be interesting to see how they could actually compete with a caliber opponent like USC.
Yeah, I think the key for Penn State will probably just be getting pressure on Miller Moss. Obviously, we know what Penn State has on the defensive line, at defensive end, things like that. And Moss has struggled with accuracy at times when he's under pressure. He's not one to shy away from it. He doesn't like to throw the ball away or take off. He's not really a mobile quarterback or anything like that. So he will stand in the pocket and he can, take some pressure, but, to a certain extent, right? And if you're Penn State, you kind of want to get back there. You want to be in the backfield all game long. You want to kind of get in his head, make him have to think about some extra factors for every play and really kind of rattle him. And then I also look at USC's wide receivers as a potential big mismatch there. I mean, I don't know about mismatch, but definitely a strength of the team for USC going against a Penn State secondary that has looked good so far, but hasn't really had to face, a wide receiver core that even closely resembles what the Trojans have.
Yeah, I mean, I think if you let Miller Moss hang in the pocket all day untouched, then he's going to have a field day. I mean, you look at his first time that the world really got to see where he was last year, the Holiday Bowl, 6 touchdowns, beating Louisville. He might put up numbers like that if they allow him to sit in the pocket all day, but obviously I do not expect that. I mean, I think Penn State's defensive line is way superior to USC's offensive line. I think the biggest thing, though, is just keeping that quick game straight. I mean, the secondary still has to play football. I mean, they're going to have to play tight. I mean, they're going to have to stop them from making plays or at least stop them from making big plays because Miller Moss is probably going to get the ball out one way or another. Penn State's going to hit him, but again, he's going to get that ball out. So I think that's a big thing to consider.
Yeah, Penn State obviously will have to travel across 3 time zones to get out to the West Coast. I don't think it will impact them too much. It'll be a 3:30 Eastern kick, so to their bodies it'll feel like an afternoon kick, and locally it'll still be a noon kick, which is fine. And obviously they left Thursday night to go out there, so they've got all of Friday to kind of get acclimated and get their body clocks right and things like that. We heard about some of the techniques that they're employing to kind of stay healthy, stay ready. On the plane ride, Nick Dawkins said he's going to be wearing his special compression pants that'll help his legs keep from getting too tight. Probably plans on taking a nap on the flight there, stretching out, things like that. Although he did say he has to be careful because if he falls over while stretching, he might tip the plane over. So kind of a hazard there that the Nittany Lions have to watch out for because obviously you can't have that. But also an additional leg of travel for the Nittany Lions who now have to drive to Harrisburg to leave from that airport because the runway at the State College Airport isn't long enough. So James Franklin made a big deal about that. Personally, I don't think it will have much of an impact on the game, that extra, whatever he called it, 2 hours of travel. Personally, I don't think it'll be that long. You could probably make that drive in hour 15.
Yeah, it's not that long. It really isn't. Mom, don't watch this. I've gotten from Harrisburg to Penn State or vice versa in an hour. It's not that long.
Speed limit.
It'll be okay.
We go on the speed limit.
He's just got
all the time.
Just some shortcuts.
All the time.
That Avery knows.
A couple of shortcuts. Down the mountains.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. It felt like Franklin was making a big deal out of it, and I didn't think it was much. But he loves to come up with something to complain about.
I don't know what you're talking about. He's never done that.
So. Yeah, again, I don't think that impacts the matchup too much, and again, it's a 3:30 Eastern time kick, so for Penn State, it's not bad. If it was maybe noon Eastern time, 9 a.m. West Coast, which I don't think they would do because of USC, I think maybe that would have a bigger impact. Or if it was 7 p.m. West Coast and 10 p.m. here, that also, but for a 3:30 kick, that kind of meets in the middle, and I don't think for Penn State it's anything crazy to adjust to. And again, they have that extra day all of Friday to kind of get adjusted to what, the time zone and everything like that. They will have some nice weather out in California. Probably a lot better than we're going to have here in State College, where it's gotten very cold very quickly.
Yeah, people are getting sick and stuff,
Yeah,
yeah. Lyle's
get those cough drops ready, guys. Get those cough drops ready. Is all I'm gonna say.
Yeah. But the spread for this game, I think opened at 2.5 and then grew after USC's loss to Minnesota, all the way up to, I've seen it at 5.5, I think, at some places, kind of depending on where you look. Yeah. We're not currently sponsored by any sportsbooks, so we can't give out a line.
Yeah,
but
no shout-outs.
There's an opportunity there if someone wants to hop in.
Wink, wink.
But I don't know. I mean, I feel like USC, obviously, it's expected to be a close game, even though USC fell out of the rankings after the loss to Minnesota. I think if you're Penn State, you can definitely watch that game, take a lot away from Minnesota. But I also thought it was pretty harsh for the voters of the poll to drop USC out of the rankings entirely. I thought that was pretty unprecedented.
Bad voters.
To go from 11 to 26 was, a little bit crazy in my mind. I don't know if you guys had any reactions to the poll.
Yeah, somebody's got to put these poll voters in timeout. They don't know what they're doing. I mean, send them to the corner. They cannot come out until the college football playoff committee comes, because they're going to take over and they won't have a chance to have any more rankings that anybody actually cares about. So yeah, I think we got to punish them, because that was ridiculous. I mean, if you look through the whole thing, I mean, you have Miami at 6, they're undefeated, but Georgia is ahead of them at 5-1. Of course, they lost to Alabama, but Alabama is at 7. Alabama obviously lost to Vanderbilt.
Wagon.
Yeah, for sure. But it doesn't make sense at all. Like, Michigan dropping 14, 15 spots, USC falling all the way out of the poll, even though they were right there with Michigan at 11 and 12. Like, it doesn't necessarily make sense. And even how Mizzou went to double overtime with Vanderbilt, but as soon as they lose, they drop 15 spots. Why didn't they drop when they went to double overtime with Vanderbilt? Like, if you're saying Vanderbilt isn't that good, be consistent. Like, it's not making sense, and I think it is dampening what this matchup really could be, even though it is still a very important matchup for both teams.
I think it's interesting when you look at it just for the Penn State USC perspective, because I think USC should still be ranked. I don't know where you want to put them, 17, 18, put them in the 20s, whatever. But
over Illinois?
Yeah, over Illinois. I mean, I think USC is a better team, and I think obviously, anything can happen with college football, but I think regardless of how the matchup goes with Penn State this weekend, I think you're going to see USC ranked again, whether it be the following week, whether it be later in the season, because this is a very good football team, and I think that just adds pressure to Penn State, considering that the Trojans are going to be unranked, because USC's playing with a chip on their shoulder, obviously, because I don't think that Minnesota team is very good. I mean, shout out PJ Fleck. That was a pretty electric post game. That's a good win for them. We're going to see if Minnesota's legit when we go to see them in Minneapolis later this year. But I think USC is a way better team than anything Penn State has seen so far this year. Obviously, Illinois was ranked whatever when they came to Happy Valley. But because you haven't seen players like Zachariah Branch, Jacoby Lane, their pair of wide receivers, running back Woody Marks, Wheeler Moss, we just talked about him, but he's the best quarterback they've seen. This is far and away the furthest thing from an unranked squad, and I just think that adds pressure to Penn State.
Yeah, I mean, I think we can all agree that, USC should be a ranked team. I think we can also all agree that they're better than Illinois, who was number 19 when they played Penn State. So not exactly sure what the voters are doing there. And just looking at the talent on the roster and the coaches on the staff, I think USC is probably more like a top 15-ish team, just kind of based on the way they've been recruiting and the personnel they have. So obviously if you're Penn State, that kind of hurts you a little bit because you lose the opportunity to pick up a ranked win. And if you lose, it obviously looks bad to lose to an unranked team, even though, again, USC I think is still a pretty talented program, obviously. And so, yeah, I don't know. For the voters, I just wish they would maybe be a little bit more consistent because, Alabama loses to Vanderbilt, drops 6 spots. Tennessee, loses to an unranked Arkansas and drops 3 spots or whatever they drop. But then you've got Michigan and USC dropping 15 spots.
The donors are doing something. I don't know what they're doing down there, but
it just means
come
more.
on.
It just means
more.
more.
I mean, yeah.
There's some fraudulent stuff there. I think we could maybe put together some better rankings than the AP can. But
AP, if you're seeing this, we're around.
Please reach out to us. We're happy to consult on these rankings. But Penn State now sitting at number 4 in the country, which I personally thought was a little bit high, especially jumping Georgia after Georgia beats Auburn comfortably. But hey, Penn State now is number 4 in the country, and with Ohio State playing Oregon on Saturday, one of those teams has to lose. So if Penn State wins, they have an opportunity to jump up at least one spot. And then next Saturday, when Penn State's on a bye week, you have Georgia playing Texas, and obviously Georgia's got a pretty solid chance to win that game. And Texas sitting at number 1 right now. If Georgia wins, Texas will drop. And so if Penn State can take care of business against USC, and then obviously they can't lose during the bye week, you could be looking 2 weeks from now. Penn State hosts Ohio State. That could be a 1 versus 2 matchup, depending on what Texas and Oregon, if those two schools go down, which is certainly in the realm of possibility. So getting a little bit ahead of ourselves there, kind of looking ahead with obviously there's a lot of different things that can happen between now and then, but there is the chance that Penn State gets to host a 2 versus 1 matchup in 2 weeks, and that would be absolutely electric. I think that'd be awesome to see, but we can kind of finish this out with our score predictions for the game. So we talked about it a little bit. USC obviously an explosive offense, but I think Penn State kind of limits them in terms of possessions, things like that. I think the defense will be good. Obviously, they'll have some breakdowns in coverage because it's impossible to keep a Lincoln Riley team from getting those explosive plays, things like that. But I think Penn State will pull this one out. I think it'll come down to a last-minute stop by the defense. I think USC will get the ball with a chance to go ahead. But Penn State's defense will come up clutch, and I think the Nittany Lions pull this one out 24-20.
Yeah, I mean, I think on the other side, I have USC winning 28-21. I think Penn State loses his first game of the season. I mean, if you look at it, Miller Moss is incredible under pressure. Like, again, Minnesota was a bad game, but I think that's kind of not the biggest representation to who Miller Moss truly is. Like, he can get the ball out quick, first of all, and he can stand in the pocket and take hits. So I think that'll be a big thing. I think that you could see big days from Zachariah Branch, even though he's not playing where he should be playing. But I do think Jacoby Lane is definitely one you can circle in. He'll make big catches in the middle of the field. He'll make big catches for a touchdown. Like, he's been a big, tough receiver. He is 6'4", probably 6'5", really. Like, he's a big guy. Like, I think he'll play a big role, and I think Penn State's slow starts will hinder them. They've had slow starts every single game. It's game 6. Like, it's kind of getting old. You're playing bad teams, you're having slow starts. You're playing good teams, you're having slow starts. So it's not really making sense to me. It just seems like they don't have it, and I think that'll hurt them, and I think they'll still get tied up. It'll be fourth quarter, probably about 2:30 left, but I think Miller Moss drives down the field and shocks Nittany Nation, honestly.
Yeah, I do agree that Penn State's going to get off to a slow start in this one, but I do have Penn State pulling away 27-20. I think USC leads at half. I think Miller Moss starts off the game pretty hot, finding Jacoby Lane and Zachariah Branch. I think Penn State's going to do their thing where they rotate all their corners, but I think come second half, Tom Allen's going to have to adjust and keep maybe 2 or 3 guys on the field at a time. But I think we've seen it so far this year. Tom Allen's been able to adjust regardless of the slow starts, and I think he's going to do just that again. And then I think offensively, I think they really pull away. Obviously, this USC defense has improved from last year. That being said, they're still not the greatest defense. Obviously, you've got Danton Lynn, former Nittany Lion, making the crosstown trip, coming over from the UCLA coaching staff. But I think Katron Allen and Nick Singleton are able to impose their will, obviously assuming if Nick Singleton's able to go. I think they impose their will late in this one. We saw Anthony Donko come back from practice despite leaving the game early last week. I think they really kind of pull away late in the fourth and kind of just force their way through the ground of victory.
That's it for today's episode. Thank you guys for tuning in. For more football coverage, you can find us at psucollegian.com and follow us on socials. Make sure you like and subscribe the video, and we'll see you next time.